Bartail has been one of the persons who's watched all the shows. I talk to him on a regular basis in the EverQuest Next IRC channel.
What we saw with, Kunark for EQ2, you did those 400 quests, you did all the content, and at the end of it, the world wasn't changed.
Yeah, I'm Phantom X. I do social media and write articles for EQ Nexus.
For the Fall of Bastion, there was a very definite, okay, this is where your story is going to fit into the world.
Listen, fluffy looking bear. Thank you. Listen, I went and I killed a dragon, and then 2 drops of whiskey hit my face, and I willed this manly beard into cow was raising. Yes.
Welcome! This is EverCast, episode 25, which we titled, I missed Caturday, but I'm still carrying it up. Obviously, we're going to have plenty of puns and cat puns on this show. So I'm one of your hosts. I am Tamlin. With me is the regular crew. We've got Chwena Kylest Flatus, and on tonight's show is our special guest, Legendary Neurotoxin.
My little Kerran came to see me. He must have smelled my catnip.
Aww. Kitty cat.
A little special guest. Legendary, go and explain who you are to our audience, even though they've seen you before.
Yeah, so hello everybody. I am Legendary Neurotoxin. I've been doing live feature rant here for a little while, since just before the beginning of Alpha for Landmark, as well as Castles and Crap Shacks, which comes on 5 to 1 hour before this show. It's 2 to 6 p.m. Pacific time on every Sunday, and at this point I'm mostly just focusing on the Kerran workshop, so that's the long and short of it. And then there's some other stuff: Dead Feature Rant for H1Z1, Unity Daily, Procedural Powerhouses, now Steam Daily, soon potentially a PS1 show is going to be starting up, but more details about that later on my own stuff. Let's get back to you folks. So
do you ever sleep, Legendary? That's something I always wonder when I see your lineup.
Yeah.
He does. I don't think he sleeps. No.
I'll have a posted schedule up pretty soon. It'll all make sense.
It's his sleep schedule. It won't be. It's like everything else is work.
He'll have 2 hours blocked out for sleep. It'll work out just fine. He's a gamer. It's natural, I believe.
Why don't
yeah, no way. We're way too strong for that.
You can sleep when
you're
way
too strong.
And the video game characters can sleep. I can keep on playing other games.
Yeah. You park them in the end, it's fine.
We'll leave the sleeping to the Karens, because we know that's all they're going to be doing.
Oh, yeah, right?
So, what do you guys think about the Karens so far, from what we've seen, before we kind of dive into everything? Are you, just overall, real quick, are you liking what you're seeing? Is there something missing? What's your opinion?
I have been strictly anti-anthropomorphic races from my first days of playing MMOs, and that is a tough word to say. Anthropomorphic. I don't like the cat people, the dog people, the fox people, the panda people don't really do anything for me. I just stick with my normal fantasy races, but yeah.
Dark elves are just bat people.
But I have. We do research for the show, so I'm looking at like all the different, ways that the cat people have been done in fiction and in not just video games, but in fiction in general. And I'm starting to turn a little bit. It's sad, and it's mostly because I'm falling in love with big cats. I cannot get enough love of big cats.
He likes big cats. He can't out.
Oh no!
You know you all were thinking.
Sometimes you.
I was going with the PG version, but yes, Yeah. Anyways, Angela, what are your thoughts on the Karen so far? Just brief overview before we go into everything. Fantastic. What do you think, Sir Fletus?
Um, I'm gonna go with the flow kind of guy when it comes to characters. Like, I think having more kind of races, as long as it fits your lore, I'm cool with it. And I think for me, EverQuest has always been that game that's had tons of races, tons of classes you can play, and it's kind of nice because, like, for Tanlin, where he's like, I don't want to deal with having to be a giant cat person. I could be a human or a dwarf or whatever. There's people that are like, I like the anthropomorphic races. I want to be the rat or the Ratonga, the Froglock, or
Yeah.
so it's nice having that mix of races that you can go through and play. So I'm cool.
Cool. And before we run to legendary, Kylis pulled a Tamlin, so we all need a drink.
Can you guys
I got
hear
some
me
catnip
now?
here, so
What did
take
I
that.
do?
Oh, Tamlin.
Tamlin!
So
And
he's
then
sleeping in
I
the cat
Wait, hold on. He muted
Cat house.
his wife.
house.
How do you Tanlin your wife? never mind.
Have we ever put an adult rating on this show yet? We really probably should one day.
Oh, jeez.
And anyway, it's because we're in the same room. Sometimes I mute whatever voice internet protocol we're using so that I don't have to hear her twice. Because
once is bad enough.
And I just didn't unmute her, so I'm sorry. I apologize. I muted her, and then I muted me, and so we're getting off to a great start on the show.
It's okay. I'm having a meow off with my animal, which is terrible because usually I'm the one who tries to focus on having the show. Well, he's seriously just standing across the room meowing at me because I didn't give him the catnip.
Well,
So
give him the
we're all having
catnip.
distractions. I did now. I gave him the dang catnip. He's happy. So, anyways, back to our opinions. Legendary, you were next in line. How are you liking the Karen so far? You spent a lot of time on your show today looking at Karen builds.
Yeah, I've been following the Karens. When I saw them with the SO emote with the licking their chops animation, I was like, yep, that's the race I'm going to be playing. And nothing's really been able to shake me from that up to this point. None of the other races really seem appealing. Like Dark Elves, I actually really don't like the fact that there's such little variation with them, that they're, because of how the race developed, it's so tight-knit. Versus Karens, they're an ancient race. They've been around for the longest, one of the longest times in this world. So they sailed out from the Karen Islands all over the place. They've got all sorts of culture to them. They've got all sorts of just, really interesting stuff going on. And the fact that they're so widespread means there's no one thing that is Karen. I feel like what we've been doing with the design stuff right now with the workshop is not necessarily establishing the Karen aesthetic for what every Karen is going to do ever, kind of like we did with the Dark Elves, but more what the Karens in the Combine stuff is going to look like, rather than Karens just out on their own being Karens. So that, and I would say I really like the idea. They're not a normal size race, they're a large size race. I like that. If you're going to anthropomorphize an animal, you might as well make it big and beefy and aggressive, or small and cute and puntable like a Froglock.
Well, I was wondering if
they're puntable too.
was that a Minotaur joke in there, big and beefy?
I guess it is now.
Yeah, you made it one. Thanks. That's wow, big and beefy. I guess my race is big and beefy too.
One other thing that I was going to say on the subject with Karens is, because there's so much potential for variation, that's one of the races I feel like is going to be a lot of fun to see role-playing in, groups of people role-playing, because people getting in with their tribal culture. And I could see especially a lot of because matriarchy is something that's actually appropriate for that culture, seeing a lot of groups that are led by females and have the female leadership. And I really love that, actually, going way back to where the legendary and legendary neurotoxin comes from. The White Tower in Legends of Might and Magic was a guild that only allowed females to join, or they only allowed a male to join if they had a female to join along with them. It was this interesting paired kind of thing. So
that is really cool, and that reminds me that like at the start of Vanguard when it first booted, that there was an all role play Dark Elf guild that only allowed women players, or not women players, but women characters into the guild because they were going with that whole drow aesthetic. And I think that was one of the things that I find appealing about the Kerran is that their society structure has a lot of room for variation just by the way that they said it's going to be tribalistic. So you can have multiple different tribes. And in this one, it's going to be matriarchal. And this one, it might be something totally different. And I think that that's, important to offer, a stark contrast for the Dark Elves, which strict militaristic, and then you have this more free-formed Kerran, and then that invites a lot of room to showcase more types of fantasy, societies.
Yeah, no, you have a good point there. But I do like that the Dark Elves, even though they didn't have as much difference, they did have a lot of depth still. They continued going back to a point where, the Dark Elves aren't necessarily evil. They're building grand because they want to show off their culture. They want to show that they have talent, that they're not just some oddly colored race that everyone looks down on. So it did have a lot of interesting points, the Dark Elves. I would say in architecture, though, and it could have been just the way that the workshop went and the way the players decided to build, but we definitely saw a continuation of one theme. And the biggest thing I like so far about the Kerrans is the fact that I'm playing Landmark again, and I'm playing Landmark a lot. I actually went through the entire progression to upgrade my pick to Legendary and everything. I haven't played that much Landmark ever, I think, and it's honestly because of the style. I really like... It's odd because it's sort of like a Tibetan style, I guess you'd say. Mm-hmm. It combines a lot of stone with wood, but at the same time, like the Kerran Islands, so it's very islandic. Is that even a word? I don't know. It's almost like a Pacific culture in the way they build their buildings.
Islander.
So
it's like Islander.
Islander, thank you. So it's like taking, which is interesting because the architecture would be Tibet, mountainous, and putting it into an area that's very tropical. So I did my build based on a mix of that kind of woodwork mixed with sort of a building they might find in Hawaii. And I think that's the most interesting thing is the open air architecture for me. The fact that the culture has all these different dichotomies, which we'll go into in a little bit. And I don't know, going back to that roleplay comment, I don't know if I want to be a Kerran to roleplay, but I think I want to be something else to make fun of Kerran's roleplaying, So I can go in and talk about licking themselves. And, here's the catnip over here, Big Kitty.
You're funnier than that, but you don't go for the low-hanging fruit. You gotta...
I don't know. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Hey, speaking of since we shifted the segued into the architecture conversation. Did anybody catch in the Landmark Live or the workshop show where they talked about the coloration and they went with what I said, which is that they're going to use more naturalistic and earth tones for their building colors.
Dude, I saw that the moment I looked at the concept art. I could see immediately stone towards the bottom, plaster towards the middle, a lot of wood detail, and in terms of when they showed off the star and kind of talked about how they're not only the nautical relationship, but also that the sky and stars and stuff is very important to them, immediately said to me, blue, green, and silver are their main accent detail colors, and that's exactly what it was.
Yep, exactly it. Also from the designs I saw during the show, I got a lot of the, like you said, the Tibetan style kind of thing, but also those. I remember one we had the indoor pool with the flowers on it. I was like, there's just one Mac Daddy cat with a bunch of a harem of cat ladies and stuff just chilling out there because they had a big couch and stuff and a hookah off to this. I was like, what is going on in that place? That's a party house. It was very chill, very very
cat house.
Yeah, it's a cat house.
Yeah, and that's we make making the cat jokes, but in thinking about how a cat society would be, you can definitely pull that in your building structures that they're going to want. They like the be high, and they like to watch things, and they like to sprawl out. It's like a lot of the builds that I saw were very much embracing that.
I want to give kudos to the art team, absolutely, about the fact that they're using so many different fundamental architectural techniques from vastly different cultures. Like I was saying, mixing like Pacific Islander culture with Tibetan culture, and the insides of those buildings. That's almost like a Middle Eastern thing, a big communal area.
Persian.
Yeah, Persian, exactly. Right. They're really doing a lot to take kind of influences that are out there in the world and adapt them to really create something that is very interesting and unique. I don't know if I've ever seen what they're going for with the Kerrans in a different type of game in any other MMO. So, and that's what I really enjoy, because something that immerses me the most is when I can get into a world and actually be taken back by the spectacle. When I can say, wow, that's amazing. I've never seen that before.
Absolutely. And I totally agree with that. Like, there is some, like, when you're playing an MMO and you go to a certain part of the world where there is a distinct like race or culture that is impressed themselves on that area of the world, and you take a look around, and it's not just like on the ground, it's like on the walls, and everything about you, about where you're at, is telling you as the player that this is something not what you're used to or expecting. It's like you're definitely in this other world. And that is definitely one of my favorite parts of MMOs, where you take that moment, you scroll your camera around, and you look around and catch all the detail in the ceiling that like most MMO. Well, I'm not going to say most MMO players, but when you're playing like fast-paced MMO, you're not going to take the time to stop and look around. You're just going to blow right through whatever you're going through. But when you reach those parts of the world that make you stop and look around, like, oh my goodness, look at where I'm at. That's just incredible for the fantasy world that are created.
Yeah, absolutely.
I need to make a comment about the architecture that I found really interesting. Did anybody else notice that there was a lot of posts in the buildings?
Yeah, I call it like an Adobe style almost, because always the Adobe huts have the posts at the top.
Well, there's some like similar to pillars, right? And they said that they'd be made of wood. Cats scratch wood.
Well,
okay, that's the thing.
Supposed to be handmade, right? All the posts and everything is supposed to be handmade. Which I don't know how Kerrans can hand make those things. I guess
with claws.
They put it on a little turner, and they just kind of sit there with their claws and shave the wood back and forth. I don't know. Go ahead, Legendary.
No, I mean, they have opposable thumbs for one thing, but I would imagine the fact that they have claws and, understand how sharp things work on soft surfaces, they probably actually have the ability to create a lot more refined tools. So while the stuff they're making might look a little bit rougher in nature, the ability to actually, design the tools to get from point A to point B, it might be really simple. It might take them only a couple minutes to break down a large chunk of wood into a bunch of planks because they have the tools for it and they've got the experience with it. I don't imagine they're going to be going around scratching up their own sort of stuff, going up to a post and just getting after it. But I would imagine if that was something that a cat wants to do, or a Kerran wants to do, rather, they wouldn't go up to it and be scratching it just for the joy of scratching it. They'd probably go up and be working a little bit more into the fine, intricate detail, and over the course of however long, just have it be like a meditative thing for them, that they're just this one post, this one corner, they're working an intricate design into.
I was just trying to make a bad cat joke.
So with the architecture, there's one thing that I wish we could explore further, and we can't really until we know how movement's really going to work, and that's the use of the natural terrain and jumping and things like that. Because really, do you expect a cat to sit there and climb stairs all the time? No. But at the same time, you need stairs for the other races to be able to visit, to a point, depending on movement. I'd like to see a lot more kind of platform things where you could jump or grapple hook to get from one area to the other in Landmark. When I set up my stairs, I kind of use giant symbols of Norai as like square platforms, and I put them up staggered, like left, right, left, right, left, right, because I figured when a cat's sprinting, they're going to sprint from side to side to get down there fast. And I'd like to see more things like that in the builds, because while I'm seeing amazing architecture through the workshop, there's not a lot of use of terrain. And that's the whole thing that Kerrans are about, is adapting to terrain. I'm seeing a lot of wonderful builds, but they're done in a very square setting, or they're done with a certain footprint in mind. And I'd like to see more organic structures take form, to see how do they actually carry over organic structures. If I build something in Landmark and want it used in EQ next, do I have to build it to where the terrain's not used? Or is there a way for me to build it organically to where it can fit into any kind of terrain? I think that's an interesting thing to look at. Because it's not always going to be flat land that they're using these buildings in. And are they modifying it? I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Would you like to see more exploration into less human architecture, I guess?
I can see there's a xenophobic Kerran tribe out there that doesn't like strangers, and they build their structures on the premise that, these humanoid races, they don't have the athleticism, they don't have the claws, they can't get up here, so they build it where you have to make, those big athletic jumps, or you have to scale a pole with your claws and everything to get up to the top. I can see something like that. That'd be kind of cool.
I mean, I'll just climb it like Mulan climbed the pole. Come on. Can't I just ride a Kerran to the top?
I hate to make a crouching tiger, hidden dragon joke, but
yeah, I mean, I imagine that's what the wood spars and posts going through the outside of the building are for. That's how a Kerran gets up. They just crawl, jump and crawl from those rather than, the humans. That's more what the ladders and the stairs are for. And they're also, a lot of times those ladders look like they're not very permanent, that the Kerran could just kick them over at any time. Then you have a hard time getting up there, but they're Kerrans. They can get up there in a single bound.
You have a good point with that, and I can imagine walking into a giant forum where you look up and you see those posts, and there are just Kerrans resting on all of those posts. So you just look way up, and you see 50 Kerrans just above, sitting.
And they're staring down at you with those predator eyes.
Yeah, that's. I would want to be.
You're interrupting Caturday.
Now that brings up something kind of interesting. I don't know what kind of a projectile weapon Kerrans would prefer to use. They seem like, among everything, a bow would be a little bit too fine for them, and a little complex to work with the claws on the end. And I can't really see them using a sling or anything. They don't really seem like the war machine type, so I wouldn't see them using ballista or catapults or trebuchets. I would imagine they're probably throwing spears. Big, huge, possibly venom-tipped spears. Or just diving straight down on people with them.
I would absolutely love to see them with halberds or polearms or javelins. Not necessarily javelins because they're thrown and that's not my personal style, but polearms and halberd, that would be amazing.
No, that would be really cool. I mean, if we go back to looking at Kishar from SOE Live with the giant shield and the strong armor, while the colors weren't necessarily something that I'd associate with the lore of the Kerran, the style was very intricate, ornate, and big and bulky. It's a muscular cat. It's something that's going to pounce on you. They're going to want some kind of armor that's really going to endure that kind of pounce and give them agility and movement at the same time. Weapons, I could see what do you think, a blowgun? Like a blow dart? Would that be kind of odd? They are
I don't think that would be weird at all.
That's where it kind of escapes me a little bit. I would have to see that Kerrans, they're going to want to, they have all that bulk to them and they have all that muscle to them, and so they're going to want to go in and big cats, when they're hunting, they use that weight to their advantage and get on top of things and and take it to the ground, and that's the type of fighting I see. Of course, that doesn't work in a total fantasy setting because you've got to make it more comparable to other races, and
especially multi-classing too,
right? Just so that just so that your combat mechanics kind of work. So you have to give them this sort of weapon so that you can have, But yeah, what about crossbows? Because those don't require the same sort of intricate fingering for bows.
Oh yeah.
Well, actually, what I was thinking is not like a little repeating crossbow like the ones that were used in ancient China, that it's just this quick little lever mechanism that you're using to launch out arrows kind of haphazardly, but something that takes that mechanic and is a lot more refined. That would have that same rate of fire and that same mechanic where you're basically pumping a lever and you're firing out of more or less a magazine, but instead it's Kerran sized and you're firing things that are really precise and really powerful. That I could see them using because all the other races that use bows and ranged weapons, they can use crossbows, they can use bows, they can use all of that. It would be just that for the mechanic of the lever, the repeating crossbow seems like it could work with the Kerran style.
I think it could too. I think it would better adapt to my perception of what the ogres are going to be, though, because we've continued to hear that the more Chinese architecture is still on hold for a certain race. And if you go back and look at Gabber's art that originally portrayed the ogre, that is a very Asian-looking ogre. Which is interesting because it kind of parallels the opposite when they showed the ogre building in the ruins in the desert, right? That's a
the time lapse
architecture,
right?
In the time lapse video, exactly. But anyways, I could see the ogres going back to my point of saying any of this. I could see the ogres more using a crossbow and using that kind of artillery, that ancient Chinese artillery, big bulky pieces of wood firing massive amounts of spears and things like that over terrain. But that's me. I don't know. Any kind of tribal combat is awesome.
Really quickly?
Yeah. No. Can we talk at the same time? Go.
Go ahead.
Someone was asking where that particular picture was from that Tamlin linked, and I don't know if he caught that. So if we could maybe let people know where the pictures are coming from, because somebody asked.
That picture that I showed briefly was some concept art that was drawn. It's on the official Landmark forums. It's not in the screen capture thread of the Kerran workshop. It is in the sketches and other art, and it's on the first page or the second page. It's not far, if you just go to the scroll through the pages. I'm going to throw it up there again so that people can see it. It's by far my favorite looking concept art that we've seen that isn't in the voxel world, in the Landmark world. So let me just bring it up real quick, and so that you can take a look with it. I love it because I think it captures the climate that they talked about in the workshop, where it is jungle, but it's not the jungle that we see in the Landmark world. It's slightly different. It has the area, the open air feel to it. It has the differentiating height, so that not everything is at the same level. But
it's very mountainous in nature, and that's kind of where the Tibetan architecture comes from, right? That's where you can sort of see that kind of concept art playing into an environment.
Right. And that was the other. Sorry, I just want one last thing. That's the other thing I like about it, because I think that when you see how the bridges are constructed, it's definitely that they are using the land, they're embracing the land, they're not trying to change it too much.
So I know what they should use for a weapon. After extensive thinking in my geeky little brain, they should use chakrams. And the reason I say that is because a chakram is a round piece, right, that you hold in your hand. It's like cool. A frisbee with a hole in the center. And the reason they should use those is because they're cyclical in nature, and they put great importance on the cycle of life. It makes sense to use something like that. It would probably have deep meaning to them.
If any EQ and devs are out there, that is a great point. Best point of the show right there. That is really good.
With one of those, and I am going to tweet Rosie with that, because people are like, nice, awesome idea.
That's a fantastic idea, because it goes right to the nature of them.
Now you're just going to make them ninja cats, though, because
tweeting her right now.
They're going to be throwing that, and then I would imagine, well, why wouldn't we also make a bladed version of the 4-pointed star and throw those at people?
Why not?
Why not? Why not give them?
I could see that, actually.
Cats are very versatile animals. Tamlin tweeted out the GIF of, I don't know, it looks like a Black Panther playing with a guy, and the Black Panther leaps off the wall. I could imagine, of course, in more of a cinematic form, because let's face it, video games still aren't there. But I can imagine Kerran's leaping from trees, pouncing on people, jumping back into the trees. That lends itself to that kind of combat, doesn't it? Of throwing shurikens or using, what's it called, Kylest?
Chakram.
Or use chakrams with an M at the
Chakram.
end?
So it's actually an ancient thrown weapon from India.
And they
There were thrown weapons, but if I remember correctly, they were also sometimes attached to a chain and used almost like a flail sort of thing.
Yep.
Oh, could you imagine? That'd be awesome.
Well, until you cut your head off with it.
True.
They're native to Tibet, Malaysia, and Indonesia, and since they're using Tibetan architecture, it seems very, very
Fitting.
fitting.
Yeah, fitting.
You're absolutely right. No, that works out.
And real quick, with the picture that Tamlin showed off, it kind of looked like that jungle type thing. It almost looked like those were peered over like a waterfall. I know it's probably a river.
No, yeah.
But you could almost see like that architecture being like because of the way like they're all heightened up over the river. It's almost like that's a waterfall, like they're peering over, and that's like the bridges connecting between the land to the other side.
Oh, definitely, yeah. So you're kind of climbing up to Shangri-La as you're trying to get to the Kerran city. No, I can absolutely see that going on. I was thinking really cool. Of how cool would it be to have a waterfall within the building. So the waterfall actually goes through the building and then drops down, and then the river flows out. Because they respect nature.
So they wouldn't. Yeah, that'd be so cool because they would be those kind of things where like the tree would grow through their building because they don't want to harm the tree.
So awesome. No, absolutely.
So on the
that was like the badass idea ever.
Yeah, like, people building Kerran stuff are watching this right now. Like we gotta go back to the drawing board.
Well, the thing with trying to build a Kerran structure around a tree is that while you might be able to get some amount of asymmetry, after all the stuff that I've reviewed of stuff people worked on and actually experimenting with myself, a central post going through a Kerran structure is absolutely a no-no. So it'd have to be done in such a way that the tree is like a quarter of the building or a quarter of the post going through the middle of it.
Or the posts on the side.
Yeah, something like that.
One of the concepts arts where it actually shows the city. And it shows like the path going across the water and the walls in the back. I don't know if you can pull that up, Tamlin. Do you have it on cue?
I should. I have the style guide available. And then you want the one with the waterfall?
Yeah, with the giant wall with all the buildings around and stuff like that. And you see the kind of Kerran waving there. You can see that the posts on the buildings on the right, and what I immediately tried to build in Landmark was, it literally looks like a tree that they cut down and just kind of put as their support. So that's where I can really see trees being used. And that's the fact that Kerrans might not always carve out these intricate wood pieces, but they might just keep it natural and use these branches to just support their roofs, or use these giant tree trunks because they love the beauty of it and they don't want to change it too much.
Yeah, for sure. But that specific piece of art was really one that also said to me it was like Kerran's building in the Combine City, not as much the Kerrans just for Kerran stuff.
That's true. You do have a good point there.
Now, one other thing, and this is kind of back on the subject of ranged weapons. Ogres were kind of touched on for a moment. Crossbows maybe, but honestly, I had the hilarious idea in my head, and I think it would actually work for them. A combination of just chucking giant boulders at things, or actually having smaller sized boulders and a nice big old log, and just baseballing it. Just, large giant chunks of rock or whatever. One of them chucks it in the air, another one smacks it with a log, and wherever it goes, but it's going to take out 20 kobolds wherever it hits them.
I would love to see traps being utilized a lot in EverQuest Next in combat areas. I'd love to see like certain sort of races use different kind of traps that you have to avoid.
Yeah.
And I could definitely see the proverbial Star Wars walker Ewok, the two trees coming together and swinging down. I could see the Kerrans easily setting that up because they're up in the trees anyways. They rig the logs up there and just watch it come down and swing. You're right, absolutely.
Easy answer, the Iron Golem.
That's all I have to talk about architecture in particular without talking about other things. Is there anything else you all wanted to hit on before we move on?
The biology was one of the big things that I've been looking at getting ready for the Kerran episode. And when I'm talking about the biology of the Kerran, I'm not talking about like the anatomy and the physiology. I'm just talking about how their skeletal structure looks in relation to other races. And I think that Legendary is a great person to have on for this particular topic because he probably knows more about it from the development point of view than anybody else. Because they've said and they've shown that the Kerran race in EverQuest Next is their knees look like they're backwards. I'm just going to put it in layman's terms. Their knees look like they're backwards.
Digitipedals.
Right,
Say that 3 times fast.
which means that they don't actually walk on their whole sole foot and their toes.
They walk on like their
They
toes,
just walk
right?
on their toes. I'm going to throw up a really quick image to show like the 3 variations of biped of feet. So that we're all on the same page and we all know what we're talking about here. Because in getting ready for the show, I learned there's that when you see like satyr and minotaurs, they have an even different foot structure than the predators like the dogs and the cats do, because they have the ungulograde, where they're not walking on the tips of their toes, they're walking on the very, very tip of their toe, not the full toe bent back.
Yeah, and I mean it's one of those things that if you just take a human and you were to evolve instead a human without a tail, but instead a human with a tail, the same sort of structures would have to have the presence there with the legs. It would still have to be that kind of an interesting shape instead of the way that we have our legs and hips and all of that stuff structured. The tail would cause all of that extra kind of work to be in there, and yeah, so the way they've done it is definitely the way they kind of had to do it, and it makes sense. But also keep in mind, like I feel like them being on all fours is, or on 2 legs rather, is something that they're doing more because they're fitting in with regular society, or because it just gives them a better viewpoint and perspective on the world. They're just as comfortable being on all fours, especially when that heroic movement comes in. I'd imagine they're going to be doing almost everything with all fours because that's where they're getting a lot more of their strength and muscle from.
Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing we saw come SOV Live when we were looking at
Right.
Kishar the Kerran, was that awesome 4-legged run. And I remember that the crowd was just cheering for that because it's the first thing we've really seen in an EverQuest game where a race could actually run on 4s. And honestly, I guess MMOs really haven't been able to do that until recently, with skeletal structures being able to be different, because I don't know if I've ever seen it until Guild Wars 2, right?
No. Warcraft did it earlier with their Worgen race, because they had a 4-legged running form, and I actually have an image of them walking, or a GIF of them walking, and I don't want to sound like I'm a WoW fanboy, because I'm certainly not, because I do not like the way that the Worgen walk in that game. And I'm gonna throw that really quick up so that you can see an idea of how the animation of the Worgen looks.
Yeah.
Cool deal. And while waiting for that to show up here, yeah, I definitely, there's a lot of interesting things, because the other thing with like the proportions of a Kerran and their anatomy versus a human, the shoulders are a lot broader. They've got almost this built-in kind of hunch that if they really stood up straight, it might not be comfortable for them, but they would have even more height than they already have. They would be able to get really, really long if they need to. But yeah, okay. Let's see if that's
that's
the way they walk is just awful.
So bad.
Wait, so yeah, go back to that for a moment, because I see what it is more than anything that bugs me. It looks like their feet kind of like flip out from under them and then find the ground and flop down, like they've got rubber flippers for feet or something. It's weird.
It's very like they take the step back, and that's like almost natural looking, but when they come back to lay their foot back down on the ground, all of a sudden it's like pudding. Yeah, see it? Like, it's fine going backwards, like they're pulling back, and then when the other foot comes up to land, it's just like flop. That's all. It's like a flop.
It looks like they have flippers.
Yeah, it looks terrible.
And that's just because that backward joint isn't really moving, right? It's not a full skeletal item. It's just there to make a visual difference.
Yeah.
Right, and then that's just them walking, and when they're running, it's basically that sped up, but their shoulders swing, and
it's so bad.
When you think of like a wolf or a cat running, it's very sleek, and it's all movement forward, and the Worgen, when they're running, they swing their arms very, very far out, and
Interesting.
and it takes away from that whole all movement going forward type aspect that you expect in those type of races. And so Flat has found this picture. I'm gonna throw this up because I think it's an important to show this picture because I did not know.
I did things.
Yeah, he did thing. And this is from EverQuest 1. I'm guessing based on just the graphic, and that like even in EverQuest 1, the race, the Kerran race or the Kerran precursor race, they have that same skeletal structure in their feet, and I think that's important to point out because when I was playing Vanguard, the all of the animal races were basically humanoid bodies with animal heads stuck on top, and that's I like animation aside, make it look like an animal, not like a human.
Yeah, technology back then was very limited.
And I thought that same thing too, but like I just pointed out, like the EverQuest had it, but Vanguard didn't, and EverQuest is like 7 years older than Vanguard.
That's true. You have a good point. I don't know if you guys remember, but Rosie during the workshop was talking about someone who went through like all the different past models of Kerrans and EQ1, EQ2, and Vostyr, and was looking like, oh, that's a fox ear. That's not even a cat ear. Blah blah blah. So they really
stepped up the game on what the cat.
They really stepped up the game of a feline look. And I don't know if you wanted to bring up that the body image that someone drew of the different types of body images with the heads, and we could talk about the actual look of the feline to see if that is that right.
Oh, which one specifically?
There's a couple. We could pop up any of them, right? Because they were talking about the saber-toothed cats. That looked amazing. I agree with Jeff Butler when he said that would be the Kerran that I would play because, honestly, I would love to have those giant like tusks coming out. But then they also had the kind of leopard-looking cats as well. The lion, we didn't really see like a Chester Cheeto lion anymore, did we? The recent
hold on, no. Flatus found Chester.
I did more work.
Chester Keytar. What did we call this guy? This is
Kishar. Oh, was it
Chester Kishar?
Chester Kishar.
Oh yeah,
that's different heads. Yeah, different heads. And the saber-tooth head is right there, is what Jeff Butler was talking about.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, we know why games have done this. It's part technical limitations and it's part workload because armor in these games have to be shared across a huge amount of races, and when you have different skeletal structures on top of different sizes, that can be very complicated on how these things wear armor and how they move with the armor.
Right, and that was one of the limitations that even when Vanguard launched, like even they had the helms, but there was no helm graphic for like, I don't know, I'm going to say 6 months and be generous with that because it might have been a lot longer before the models in Vanguard actually had helms that you could see because they couldn't get the helmet to go on the characters, and like the open face helmets, it was important for you to still be able to see the face, and so it took a whole lot of work after the game launched for them to do that. So I again, that's one of the things that we can think about. Like we see all of these Kerrans with their no headgear on, but what type of how is it going to work? How's it going to fit?
Because nose, yeah, you're right.
Well, no, because I've played your Guild Wars 2, and my main was one of the cat race for which I'll forget because I haven't really been playing a lot of Guild Wars 2, but I played it.
I thought they were kind of doggish. Weren't they kind of canine?
They were supposed to be cat.
Were they? Man.
Yeah, a little bit. Maybe. I don't know. Someone's going to be there, like, somebody in chat's going to correct me, probably, and be like, no, they were dogs!
They were dogs.
No, they were cats.
They were cats, right?
Yeah.
All right, good. If somebody yells at me, their butt is so clenched right now. But, yeah, they wore helmets and stuff, and their helmets, like, Guild Wars did a really good job with the armor, like, how they wore, even, like, especially because their cat people had, like, you could have horns. The char. Yeah. They had horns coming out of their head, like, because it was like a weird cat race, and you could have like, and they made it work. They made the helmets really work for those characters. So it just depends on the designers how they want the armor to fit on the characters. It could be something like it could be something like WoW, where like the trolls when they put on boots, since their feet are so big, they don't actually have a full boot. Their toes come out of the front, like it's
Well,
almost like a
right,
heel
right.
sock. Almost.
Well, right. Well, and then they're not the only race that does that. All of the
Yeah.
the Draenei and the Tauren both do that too. Like you can have a boot, but there's no foot. You've got a
Boot,
hoof.
yeah, a hoof, yeah.
And in regards to helmets too, SOE mode, I mean, how much do the developers really want to encourage you to hide your entire face? So honestly, the way they actually design helmets and stuff might have certain features to where you can kind of peer through and see the eyes moving or the mouth moving. I'm sure we'll still see like full face masks, but I don't know if that'll be the majority of what we
Let's
can find.
let's look at it from a different angle. I'm a Kerran. I want something to protect my head, but I don't want to lose the key things that help me be a predator. My hearing, my range of vision,
And your
my
mouth.
range of being able to move my neck, being able to use my mouth, full range of motion there. That's, and then all of that stuff being considered, the only way I could really see a helmet working on a Kerran is a series of like straps that kind of hold a smaller frame in position, and then on that frame is larger kind of pieces of metal that will help deflect blows from various angles. And that's about all I would be able to see them doing. I wouldn't see a full like form-fitting metal helmet going on a Kerran at all.
Yeah.
Kind of like a leather head or something like that, or the watermelon.
Do you really
helmet
think
that
a
we
cat
tweeted
is going to
out.
wear leather?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess because it's more of an agile material. I mean, of course they'll be wearing all sorts because
Comes from
Kishar
nature.
has strong iron. It comes from nature, yeah. And they probably hunted down the beef to eat it, and then they wanted to reuse the skin for something, right?
Oh no, I'm
Is it all-
gonna be wearing elephant hide.
Oh,
That stuff
quite
that
classy,
stuff is
sir.
tough. It takes
It
like
is.
if you're trying to actually surgically get through an elephant skin to do like surgery on it, you're gonna snap like 5 or 6 scalpel blades just trying to get the one first incision in. Their skin is really freaking tough.
That's interesting.
Yes, Zalk Darcini in chat real quick said, look at helmets on horses, and I'm sure a plate would look that kind of like that. He's right, and if you ever seen an armored horse, it just fits over the back of their head and goes straight down their
Yeah.
Oh, that could be really cool.
So
too.
that you could probably, it's going to be something like that almost. That's how it's going to kind of be designed. So,
Horse armor is called barding, by the way.
Barding, yeah, barding.
And those were my dogs being jerks. I apologize. There's probably a bird outside or maybe a squirrel.
We said cat, and the dogs are like, wait,
Yeah.
what's going on?
Yeah.
I would say the other consideration to think of though is that horses mostly stay upright. These Kerran, I would imagine full range of motion. If they've got to be upside down or whatever in the process of wrapping something up and tearing it to pieces, well, whatever. I could see them needing that full range of motion. So with barding, it kind of lays over the top of it. It doesn't, if you take a horse in full armor and you flip it upside down, that barding kind of falls off.
No, it doesn't.
No? Are you
No.
sure?
Allow me to say from a historical perspective, no, it does not come off, and it's not easy to come off, and throwing a horse around isn't going to make it come off. And the reason why is in the middle of combat and you're jousting and that horse gets knocked over, because it happens. What happens to the armor? Where does it go? It's not reasonable for it to come off. So no, it was strapped down. What you saw is just the metal on the head and the body, but there's actually straps. So it won't just easily come off.
That's true.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was a history major. And sort of a history nerd. And stuff.
Well, it's good that someone knows.
So do you think there'll be
Tamlin knows too. I don't know why he's not over there speaking up. But maybe he knows that that's my thing that I really
Dogs.
like to do.
Do you think there's going to be an emote of a cat licking themselves? They stick the one leg up, and do you think we could see that come EverQuest next? Do you think
Please,
at least
no.
maybe like a paw lick or something?
No. Well,
They are cats. They got to clean themselves with their tongue, right?
I can see maybe as like a AFK movement, like where your character's just sitting still, like maybe just like as a joke, just do that or something.
I totally want to see that.
That
like
art
the-
is amazing,
like-
Canlon. Where'd you find that? Is that on the landmark?
That
form?
was a beautiful, anthropomorphic looking cat.
It looked
like
really
Mufasa.
was.
No,
Really?
okay. All of the images that I just showed are in the same thread where I showed, or not the same. Yeah, no, they're
That
in the
one's
same.
really good looking. I like it.
They're all in the same thread where I showed the
It's
architecture.
Braveheart, Cat.
William Wallace Kerran, yeah.
But you can never
Like a
take
wreck.
my freedom.
Oh,
No, gosh. Yeah. I don't even know what I was going to say to that. How feline do you think the skeleton structures are going to be? Like, are we going to see their vertebrae move when they actually run? Are we really going to be on them with 2 legs the entire time, and it's just going to be a sprint that actually puts us on 4 legs? Are they going to be bold and really try and take it a different direction? Is it even a good idea, game-wise or game design-wise, to do that?
I think about it this way: if they're always going to walk around with something in their hands, if you're always walking around with the
Then you wouldn't be on
shield
all
and
fours.
something, you're not going to be on all fours. So there's that. And once again, while they might be able to move a lot faster and have a lot more of their strength behind them when they're on all fours, at the same time, it probably also takes more energy to actually move like that on all fours. And the other thing is, like I had said earlier, they're really going to want to have that height advantage. The reason why they'd be standing is because they're going to be able to see around them a lot better and be able to spot things in the distance. If they want to sneak up on something, I'm sure they'd be able to go on all fours, and I'm sure on all fours it'd make it a lot easier for them to do that whole cat head not moving while the rest of the body's moving and they're going forward thing.
It's like breaching the 3rd wall there. I felt you were going to touch me. Legendary. Anyways, no, you're absolutely right. And I guess I can see when it comes to the NPC factions of Karens, you can see like the Vashir out in the wild. They could actually be animated to a point where they can actually be on all fours most of the time. Maybe there's those that we play that are adapted to 2-leg walking, and then we could actually see some Karens that prefer to be on 4 legs. And that's a way to do it, because necessarily that NPC doesn't have to have the same armor that the player has. Do we want to go into the actual lore behind the Karens, what we've learned so far, what we like, what we don't like? Because we've touched on it for points, but we haven't really discussed too much. For me, it's all about the dichotomy that they're creating that makes it the most interesting. The fact, that they're ferocious, they're territorial, yet they're in harmony with nature and themselves. They have like these communal gathering places where they sit around, yet they don't want their windows poking at each other because they want their privacy. I mean, that's a very interesting race. It's almost like a rabid dog. You don't know if they're really going to attack you or not. You're always kind of living on the edge when you're around a Karen, I guess. Sounds like Flatus.
Yeah, I'm just live out in the woods by myself.
Really? Yeah? No internet, right? No internet.
Talon's got Talon and Kylos got the right. They're out in the desert.
That's true.
Well,
No.
The way you explain that, though, keeping to themselves, territorial, not really being as inviting to outsiders, and outsiders always having to be on edge when they're near them, sounds exactly the same as the Dark Elves. Dark Elves, you go to eat dinner with them, they can press the button and bring the sword down on you.
That's true.
I guess it's the same kind of, and I guess that could really be kind of built into the game, that whole just uneasiness of all of the races, that they're comfortable with each other and not as comfortable with the other ones. And that'd be, if they can really build that into all of the races, or the races that it pertains to, it would really make sense. And especially for Dark Elves and Karens make sense. Karens have been around for a while. They don't need anybody else. They're a self-sustaining race. Likewise, Dark Elves, they feel they're the top of the elf empire, the doll empire, which I'm sure there's probably still a lot of Dark Elves that want to bring back the empire or whatever, rather than living in this new reality that's going on. So it's kind of interesting to think of how much isolation and how much being associated with the other races we're going to actually see.
Yeah, and that's one way to actually increase a sense of danger in the world, because that's what we all kind of want to a point, is the fact that as a gamer, I'm not just afraid of losing hit points, but that the fact if I walk into this situation, I myself can get tense. And if we could actually have these moments where we see slight facial cues with the SOE mode technology and this increased animation, to where, an NPC that's typically friendly is agitated that day and just has that face, and if we're not watching out for it, that we're swapped against the wall or something, like, There's a lot of potential.
And that reminds me, I would love to see like an indicator for like your NPCs like frame of mind, like how they're feeling. Like they're talking about like all the expression that they want to be able to communicate through the face. I'd love to see that in the tail, because you can, if you have a cat, you can tell a cat's mood by what it's doing with its tail. Like when it's shaking that tail, twitching, it's ready to pounce on something. I would love to see that sort of those sort of cues about.
I think that would be built into the emotes, like you do front/drunk or front/angry or whatever. I don't know what a drunk tail wag looks like.
That would be kind of cool, yeah.
I want a limp tail. Its tongue is hanging out. It's like, because that's such a giant tongue, right? That would be hilarious.
It's like chewing and eating a Big Mac.
That's exactly it. Anyways, but the video that Tamlin was showing of the run animations that they showed at SOE Live, the end, what Legendary was talking about, that lick where it licks its teeth, it kind of roars a little bit, it's like, and its eyebrows are kind of doing the fun. Really expressive, really emotive. I can't wait to see more of that, and I can't wait to see how SOE mode actually plays into that, because if I'm a Kerran, how do you adapt a human face to a Kerran's face? How am I going to be talking as just myself, and the algorithm actually compute it well to a model that is so different than my actual face? That'll be interesting to see.
We should load up EverQuest 2 and play around, right?
And we should not look at SOE mode in EverQuest 2 was a very early experiment. The models, you have to remember, are from 2004. They weren't adapted that much to be able to be that expressive. They're very basic, mouth open, mouth closed, eyebrow up, eyebrow down. So what we see in EQN, I'm sure it's going to be very different.
Now that actually makes me think of something. Do asymmetric facial animations, like if I do the Locke scowl or if I do like the Elvis lip, is that going to translate, or is it going to try to do its best to do it
keep it symmetrical?
Symmetrically across both sides of the face? Because if I'm just doing the Elvis lip, I can't do it very well, but the sort of thing. You got it there.
The Billy Idol.
Yeah.
With the rebel,
with beards right now too in EverQuest 2. If you have a beard, it really has problems keeping track of your face. Lighting too, and camera quality. I have problems, and I don't have a beard or anything yet. My character will only kind of keep on my face for a second, then after that, my elf's looking like. So,
well,
the technology has had to improve, but I wonder how far it's come. We haven't seen it yet, so they've still been working on it. It's on the roadmap for Landmark after SOE Live. I'm sure we will see more of it at SOE Live, but I don't know. That's a good question, I guess. We probably don't have an answer for it.
You got to think that they've had so much time to work on it and pull it over, and now that where the technology was to where the technology is now, I mean, that's 10 years. And look at it like any CGI movie 10 years ago, and then look at like a CGI movie now. Leaps and bounds better. So, same for gaming. Look at a 2004 game and look at something from now.
SOE emote was only introduced in like 2009 or 2010, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was introduced much later. So,
but it was in development though for a while, right? Before that,
I think they bought an outside company and they adapted it to their product. So. I mean, that's usually what happens. But you're right. The character models in EverQuest 2 were never made to be that expressive. They were made in 2004 when they were working on the voice packs and the actual narrative of the game. Voiceover. There we go. My brain's not working tonight. The voiceover of the game. They were working on simple animations for that, and then they just kind of adapted it. But from the expressions we've seen, that the animations in Landmark are some of the best animations I've ever seen in an MMO. Like, bar none. Would you guys agree with that?
Well, they've got a lot of technology that they can release when they're ready to, because we've seen how fast they can take the O nod and turn it into an in-game nod or an in-game animation.
They said we're going to be able to record our own facial
right. So and that was really quick. That was like a week. That it took them literally a week just for them to be able to capture that on camera and then animate a character to do it.
I would say with the background and animation, it took at most 15 minutes during a lunch break.
Okay, well there you go. But I'm just saying that they're looking at that like we don't like EverQuest 2 has its flaws with the SOE mode. Whatever they're working on now, it seems to be better for what we're expecting it from it.
I don't know if you guys remember but right before we go to break, Med tweeted out, God, it was early this year, that they acquired a company or acquired a product that allowed players to make their own animations. We're talking about SO emote being able to record your facial animations into an emote. What if it's tied into that system? What if we haven't seen it yet? But what if there's something really big in the works to where not only can I create facial animations and sell them on the marketplace, but I can actually make that tail animate.
We should go to we should go to break.
We should go to break.
Yeah,
because
I can't get it off my mind. My chest is racing.
Diggs brought it up in chat, and we talked about it in the pre-show, and it's because. And I'm just going to say this. They've talked about it in H1Z1 that one of the things that they're going to allow people to purchase is emote packs, right? And we talked a little bit about that in the pre-show about like that for EverQuest Next. So hold that thought. We're going to go take our break and come back in 5 minutes and probably jump right back on into that topic because we all have our opinions about that particular subject. So I'm going to throw up a video. This is for all those dwarves out there. We still love you.
Oh yeah, we can talk about that too, because I don't really love you that much. See you guys when we get back from break.